well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a winner, well, a bird, bird. The bird's a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a winner, well, a bird, bird. The bird's a winner, well, don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody knows that the bird is a winner, well, a bird, bird.
Hello everyone to the 50th episode of Everyday Eternal, your favorite biannual podcast. I just said to Matt and our special guest Callum Smith tonight. We got these two fine gentlemen on the cast, and especially Matt, like, it's so good to have you back. We were getting so many messages about, like, where have you been, what happened to Matt, why did you send him away, has he been, like, exiled from the podcasting community? Tell us about yourself, Matt. Where have you been?
I'm back. Where have I been? Big changes. I moved away from Vancouver in June, and I joined the Army. I'd been in the Army for a few years.
You're in the Army now.
Yes, exactly. Join the Navy. Anyway, point being, I was in the Army, but eventually they said, hey, you can't just keep going around being in the Army without having learned how to kill a man, which is called basic training.
Is that how it works in Canada?
No. You have to do basic training. So what ended up happening was I needed to go on this course. Pardon?
I thought we were going somewhere else, so they sent you to, I don't know, Afghanistan, and no.
No, they sent me to Montreal, which is basically Afghanistan, right? It's like French Afghanistan. No. So anyway, so basically I sat in these pods with a bunch of people, and we learned a bunch of stuff that really doesn't matter, and we ate terrible food, and we had to run around in gas masks and shoot things, and it was okay. It was bad because I didn't get to play Magic and I didn't get to be with my spouse, but other than that, I'm back now. But
it actually sounds like one of those training levels that you get, like, in shooters, like in the late 90s, early 2000s.
It's like the beginning of Half-Life, where they're like, go through this thing.
Hazardous course.
Yeah, exactly. It was basically the hazardous materials course.
That makes you jump very far?
Didn't work for me. No. So, I had really bad blisters throughout the entire course. I was in a wheelchair for a week while on basic training. So I had 2 assault rifles in the wheelchair. I was a tactical wheelchair for a week. It was a good time.
So at this point, you're like, no, a minister of war praying, minister of death praying for war.
I am praying for a conflict. Inside somebody's mouth as I go back to. So now I'm back, and all I do is do dentistry all day, which is pretty great.
And it also gives you a lot more time to play Legacy again, right?
It does, except the place that I got moved to doesn't have a Legacy scene. Amazing.
I mean, this is where you come in, right? Weren't you responsible for, like, creating the Seattle, Vancouver Legacy scene for a while?
I did. I am the one who started the Vancouver Legacy scene back up after a drought of a few years, and that was about a little over 10 years ago. So, however, just due to the number of people that we have on Vancouver Island, it's a little bit tough with the cost of buying. However, there are some people with cards, so it's just about getting a regular thing going. So, you just got to run it back and try again.
Awesome. And you mentioned that tomorrow is going to be your first tournament in over half a year, right?
That's correct. So, yeah, I haven't really played any Legacy since June when we moved. So tomorrow I'm going back to Vancouver to play in a tournament. I think it's a 1K tournament, so it's pretty small. But we're hoping to get, I think, 30-35 players, which is pretty big by Vancouver standards. And I'm hoping Siege Rhino still crushes Delver in this format, so let's see.
And that's what exactly what we're going to talk about in the second part of this cast. We want to bring you up to speed. We want to, like, see how someone who's been away for like half a year actually perceives the changes that we've seen in Legacy over the last 6 months pretty much. But for the first part, we got a special guest tonight. We got the extraordinary Callum Smith from, actually I want to say London. I'm not even sure if you're based in London, Callum.
Yeah, it's from London, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. We
yeah,
got you on. And you've been associated with like a very special type of deck recently. Like I think you were the first one to actually pick up the card Arc-like Phoenix that was recently printed, and I think it was the latest Ravnica set. And while most people were like playing it in Standard to a lot of success, even Modern, and I even saw Max Gilmore like try to break it in Vintage.
Yes.
You're the one who put in the work for Legacy. Yeah. So maybe tell us something about yourself before we move on to the deck. Actually, where did we meet for the first time? I was just wondering.
Probably at an MKM event, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
I think it was like in Barcelona, right? When I came to our apartment,
Yes,
there were
yeah.
like 8 drunk British guys playing
Miracles
against miracles, and I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, we were watching Anders try and play elves.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. Anders season playing elves and horribly failing at that.
Watching miracles player try and play elves was a delight.
Oh, that was amazing. Actually, now that I think about it, didn't you top 8 or top 16 the Eternal Weekend 2017 or something?
Yes, yeah, I top 8'd that, yeah. It was the one with the weird kind of like top 16 cutoff, then a playoff to make top 8.
Yeah, I remember that because back then I knew like your nickname online was White Faces, and there was one guy in the picture who was like unhealthily white. Like he was so white I thought he was about to die, but later on I learned that he was just Finnish, so it made all sense. And for like half a year I thought that was you.
Right. I remember looking really odd. I'd just come from skiing in France, and so I'd got sunburn. So I'd said to my friends, I don't really want to top 8 because then I'm going to have a picture of my face all sunburnt, and then obviously I cursed it and top 8'd.
Awesome. So, Callum, tell us about the Arc Phoenix deck. Like, why did you start working on the card? Actually, for our viewers, maybe you can tell us what Arc Phoenix does in the first place, and then we'll talk about the deck.
Yeah, so Arc Phoenix is like 3 in a red for a 3/2 flying haste, which is so it's like a Delver. But the very important aspect is it says at the beginning of your combat, if you've cast 3 or more instants of sorceries during your turn, you return it from the graveyard to play. So it's one of these very eternally kind of focused feeling cards. So whenever I see a new set, I kind of look at all the set, and anything that looks abusable, I'll kind of think about. But it didn't stick out to me really as a legacy card. I thought maybe there's a chance there's some standard and modern stuff, but it wasn't. I didn't have the idea first. I saw other people playing with Buried Alive, I think in Spanish Inquisition sideboard, which was pretty cool. I think I saw a screenshot from someone, just like having that as a sideboard plan. That inspired me to, I don't know, work on the deck as more of a pet deck. I had no idea it'd become like a competitive thing as it has done, but it's just completely overperformed in every aspect, basically.
How long have you been working on the deck right now?
So I think I started working on it at the beginning of December, so about 2 months now.
Okay,
so,
and you recently placed second in the Legacy Challenge on Magic Online.
Yes,
There was like over 100 players in it.
Yes, it was 103 players. The last Sunday came second, lost the finals to a great Ant player, Cyrus Coleman Gill, which I'm sure everyone knows about. Very interesting finals, but it's just been overperforming. I think I even faced some very bad matchups, and as we've tuned the deck, I've had a very good team helping me work on it as well. And every single little tuning part I'm noticing as we go along. It's almost like, fixing a big machine, and when it's going to get there.
Oh, that's interesting. So who's on your team?
So the very first person I was working with was Power22 Online, who is Pete White from London as well.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Yeah, so if you ever play in the Legacy Leagues Online, he's always playing very interesting brews, usually with Brainstorm and stuff. But yeah, his mind is very focused towards the weird interactions in Legacy, so he's been invaluable.
Brainstorm.
Yes. He's the one that really, we started the deck actually with Dark Petition, with Cabal Ritual, or LED and Infernal Tutor, because both of those pairings make 3 mana and a tutor effect to get the Buried Alive. But when you were becoming more like Storm focused like that, it was just vulnerable to the same Storm hate that Storm is, but it was a worse Storm, admittedly. So that's when we became thinking about different axes of attack, and I came up with the Grixis Pyromancer shell as when you couple a young Pyromancer, like a go wide kind of board with Discard, which is a natural synergy, and then a graveyard interaction. They're fighting on 2 very, very different axes that are just the cards that commonly played in Legacy struggle to interact with both at the same time. So that's where the kind of beginning idea came from, and as I said, working. So
I can attest to that. Like playing and especially sideboarding against this kind of deck, it's so weird to me because I do want to bring in the ley lines, for example, but there's been many games where I've got the opening hand ley line and I do keep it, even though the rest of my hand is only like a 5 out of 10 or whatever, and then just young Pyromancer runs me over, and it feels so bad because you still have to bring them in. But I do think that something like Surgical is probably a little better because it makes you I don't know.
Yeah, no,
everybody right now is on ley lines, right, on Magic Online because of Black-Red Reanimator, but Surgical is a card that you can still play after you've drawn it, and it's not like this huge 4 mana commitment, and some people can't even cast it in the first place. So I think you're attacking the metagame from a very, very interesting spot.
I do think the deck is just completely unique in that aspect. It's really is mid-range combo. I think we've had control combo with kind of like the countertop omniscience decks, I guess, is an example. We've had pairings, but this kind of mid-range combo I don't think I've come across before. So
elves then.
I do love elves. Draws many cards. But I've had friends ask me saying, how do I sideboard against the deck? And I genuinely don't know. I'm struggling to play against it myself. It's hard. So I think that's one of the real strengths of it, which it wasn't apparent when we first built the deck. Again, we kind of built it thinking this is just a very cool interaction, let's go with it. But no, it's just overperformed, which is pretty fun. The other person who's put in some work at the beginning was Cartesian, who's Matt's. Mm-hmm. You probably know him.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's like the Legacy Magic Online All-Star deck list. It feels like always involved in some way.
Yeah, Bob was interested in the deck at the beginning.
Was Bob the guy who wanted to add Bob to the deck?
Actually, yes. Yeah. Funnily enough, and honestly, I brushed off the idea. He suggested it a couple of weeks ago, and I just thought Bob sounds narcissistic. But jokes aside, I thought it sounded a bit slow and clunky. But the challenge last Sunday was the first time I tried Bob, and I just jammed 3 of them in there, and he completely overperformed. So I'm pretty sure that's the direction we'll see the deck go in now.
Matt, you were about to say something.
I was just going to say, I feel like Legacy changed, and I walked away, and they banned Deathrite Shaman, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave the room, and then I came back, and the room was on fire. So
I think it has been on fire for quite a while, but now it's starting to settle down. But yeah, I mean, to an outside viewer, I think it very much must feel like that right now.
Yeah, it's such an interesting list, because I'm looking at your list right now, and I feel like it's almost like it's a mini Vengevine, right? It's like
it is in a way.
It's like it feels like we're going back to 2010, just in a slightly different way.
Except for rather than casting creatures, you're casting brainstorms and ponders.
Exactly.
Which is a big upgrade. Yeah. But yeah, it's very, very similar to this kind of Vengevine decks. Like, you don't have the power of survival of the fittest, I guess, but I don't know, I've genuinely been blown away by the explosiveness of this deck, especially since the Lotus Petals have been incorporated. Like, I would say it's very hard to see what the deck is capable of just when you look at the list, but when you see it play out, it really can, like, tussle with decks going to turn 10 plus and like really grind through stuff.
Yeah. You know what I really like? The inclusion of young paraments like Cable Therapy, because Cable Therapy doubles as like 2 spells pretty much when counting for Arc like Phoenix. And with young paraments, it's so easy to like double cast it to get even closer to triggering it.
Yeah, what Cabal Therapy does in this deck, I think it's the best Cabal Therapy deck I've ever seen in Legacy, which I know is big words to say, but it's your discard outlet for Arc like Phoenixes as well. Again, this wasn't like a easy interaction to spot when we first made the deck, but Cabal Therapying yourself, just naming Phoenix, it's still powerful. Like, it's still a Delver coming in with haste and stuff. And you very often do have like a therapy left over because you thought seize once or twice, then you therapy the rest of their hand, and they sometimes just don't have much of a hand left, so you just therapy yourself with the Phoenix and go to work.
It's also interesting that because of your very low blue count, you can't afford to run Forcible. And I think I heard you talk about that on another podcast of some friends of ours, the Eternal Durdles guys, that like this deck is very vulnerable to top decks, like pretty much every deck that heavily relies on discards. Yeah. But do you think that's still like the correct way to do it? Because like Forcible, I can imagine being stuck in your hand at times, and also like having to change the list quite a lot in order to be able to run it in the first place. I think this deck really knows what it wants and what it wants to do, and that is like casting your stuff and just trying to get there with what you have available, and then like having your opponent miss a top deck like once or twice. And in that way, it very much reminds me of elves. This is like almost like Grixis elves to me.
That's very accurate. It sounds completely how I feel as well. Like I never actually had. I tried 2 or 3 leagues, I think, with Force In, and they were, maybe it was just variants, and I should test them more. But they were so shockingly bad. Like the fact that you had to hold back cantrips, like a Ponder, or a Preordain, which is so key to the deck, like getting its plan in action. It just felt like it was fighting against what the deck wants to be doing.
Well, your deck seems to be all about momentum, right? You're all about generating like card into card into card into card, and if you're holding up cards to maybe counter something,
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I had such a bad experience very quickly that I just kind of threw them to the wayside. Maybe now that the deck has kind of like picked up and people play it more, maybe we should incorporate Force of Will just because people don't expect it. That was like I wasn't playing Dazes at the beginning, but I knew that I wanted to play Dazes if people learned about the deck. So my plan is to like switch up, especially counter magic suites, as people expect and don't expect things. But yeah, the deck is still not even finished, I think. I think what we're playing now is far from, well, not far from, but still not the best version. There's about 6 or 7 flex slots that can be worked with at least.
What would you say are the matchup that this deck really destroys, and which are the matchups you really don't want to face?
Grixis control has been by far the most positive. Like they still have the tools to win, but the problem is they're so slow and they have no way to punish you just taking the game slowly. Apart from him, can be a bit annoying, but you just have so much filtering that you just find the 1 or 2 pieces. And one of the other main like strengths of this combo is it's of such low resources. I think, to be anecdotal, in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of the last challenge, I mulliganed to 5 in game 1 on the play, and they Inquisitioned me on turn 1, so I was down to like 4 cards, and turn 2 they'd conceded because I had Ponder and just found a Dark Ritual and a Buried Alive.
I guess technically, I think this deck is capable of turn 2 kills. Like if you get Dark Ritual, Buried Alive in the first turn, you attack for 9 on the first turn. How crazy is that? I guess technically there might even be a way where you Cable Therapy like a Phoenix from your hand and attack for 12.
Well, you have 3 Lightning Bolts as well. This is where Lightning Bolt becomes in, because it's very good in control or against creature matchups or Delver or Death and Taxes or whatever. But against combo, the Lightning Bolt is the finishing of a 2-turn lethal from the combo. So the Phoenix is attacked for 18 and the Bolt finishes it off.
And like, I guess you did, but have you ever gotten turn 2 kills with?
Yeah. Well, people usually concede. Yeah, no, I think I got like 5 turn 1s in the challenge at least.
Turn 1s.
Yeah. Well, turn 1 combos. Sorry, not kills.
I was
yeah.
Like, what?
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, so turn 2 kills technically, but if you're playing against a non-combo deck, they just can't beat it. Like Miracles can Terminus, but then you can Bury It Alive again and just get them back out.
Turns on your Buried Alives.
Yeah. So I think FedEx just can't beat it unless it's a very late game. But the inclusion of Lotus Petal is what really pushed the turn 1 potential of the deck, because very often you have either 2 of Dark Ritual, Buried Alive, or Lotus Petal, and then you ponder or Preordain or Brainstorm for the missing piece, and if you find it, there we go.
So I think that I can kind of relate to that, because like one of the big traditions, I want to say, of mid-range combo decks has been that they are usually very good against control decks, because control like has problems on a strategic level dealing with this kind of deck. And when you mentioned that like this is good against Grixis control, and I would imagine at least the first game is also pretty good against. Is it actually good against Miracles?
Counterbalance is a real problem for the deck.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
So I think Miracles is still kind of back and forth between if they want to play counterbalances or not, but if this deck really does pick up and becomes like a staple of the format, then I'm sure we'll see them play more of them. But it really revolves around if they can find that or not. And usually you can discard it quickly or you can get a combo under it. But yeah, Miracles is harder than Grixis, but it still felt pretty favorable.
I think that's just a general thing in Legacy that's going on right now, that Grixis is so strong. And the one thing that Grixis has troubles against is like dealing with enchantments. That's why people like on a more general level are playing back to basics, and people are like including Counterbalance again and Miracles and stuff. That's like also like I think Choke is seeing a lot more play than it used to like a year ago or something. I think that's like one of the big battles in Legacy right now.
Absolutely.
One card I'm seeing is Goblin Crater Maker in the sideboard.
I was looking at that guy.
Yeah, that's an uncommon inclusion, at least like for Legacy, but probably not for the stack, because I've seen Goblin Crater Maker even played in the vintage version of the stack.
Yes.
So what is it there for?
He's a little bit slow and mopey, but basically he's mostly for Eldrazi Chalice matchups and Death and Taxes. So the very key interactions are he gets under Thorn of Amethyst and Thalia against those decks, and he's red to cast against Blood Moons to kill Chalices and Trinispheres. And he can kill the threats in Eldrazi. So Eldrazi I was struggling with because they would either have very disruptive heavy draws or very creature heavy draws, and because it was very often one or the other, I couldn't really like cantrip properly or guess what they were going to do. Sometimes they just have like one Chalice which you have an answer for, but then they Thought Knot and double smash you. So in that case, I don't know, the Creator Mage just gives you so much flexibility against Eldrazi. So he's been fantastic there. Against Death and Taxes, he can be cast through Prelate. So Prelate's given me a lot of problems because they've started incorporating Chalice of the Void in their sideboards. So Chalice of the Void on 1, and then Prelate naming 2 kind of shuts off a Braid and Echoing Truth. So it was kind of like a lock against the deck. So yeah, he's partly for that. And yeah, as I said, notably against Blood Moon decks, you want to be able to cast your things that kill Chalices under Blood Moon. So yeah, so he's 1 mana more than I'd want this answer to do, but he brings so much flexibility. And I sided in against Show and Tell as well, and I've killed a couple of Emrakuls with it.
That's cute. You should, if you do that, like at the next big Legacy event, if you do it on camera, people will go crazy.
Oh, I will make sure to make it a spectacle. But yeah, so that's his inclusion. I think this deck's sideboard is the thing that's been worked on the very least, so it's still really in flux, and this is what I think the next working on the deck will go towards.
I see 2 Engineer Plague in the sideboard. Do you have trouble against, I would guess, Elves and maybe Death and Taxes?
Yeah, they were completely over the top, and it was just for Elves because I kept losing to Elves. But yeah, as you were saying, so Elves is exactly like this deck, so this is the Grixis Elves. I think I really understand that comparison because this deck has trouble with top decks, as does Elves against other combo, I guess. So you would discard them, put them lethal next turn, and then they top deck. Against Elves, they always just top deck the Natural Order of the Glimpse every single time.
Of course, that's how the deck is built, right?
But yeah,
do that. Easy game.
Every single time. But so I was out on the day of the challenge, and I got back like 10 minutes before it started. So I really didn't want to lose to Elves, so I just threw them in there. But I would cut them now, so don't worry about it.
Okay. So what are other matchups that where you struggle?
The hardest one has been Dark Depths, by quite a lot actually. There's no Wastelands in the deck, obviously, so you can't really interact with their land-based combo, and discard obviously can't hit the lands. So against them, you really need to put them under a quick block, but they have main deck crop rotation for Bajuka Bog to stop the combo. And in the sideboard, they very often play 3 or 4 surgical extractions, so they have a lot of interaction for your combo. They have discard to attack your cantrips and critical mass to try and get the combo off, and like specific pieces. And they have a combo that is very hard to interact with for us. So there's kind of like 3 different versions of depths. There's the bug one, which has been by far the hardest because they have Flusterstorms as well. They have Brainstorms to find the key pieces they need. The turbo one has been difficult as well because they just combo faster, but they have less ways to stop you doing your thing. And the turbo one's been the easiest one because they're just slow, and they're playing things like Dark Confident, Liliana the Last Hope, and Sylvan Library, which you just don't really care about.
Oh, you mean the mid-rangey one?
Yeah. So that's the easier one.
Yeah. I guess having Arc like Phoenix like to block Merrick Ledge a lot of times also helps quite a lot.
So it's actually, the matchup plays out, if you can get the combo off underneath their crop rotation or surgical in post-board games, it feels similar to Elves, where you get the combo out, you can block a Merit Lage, attack them for 6, then like block a Merit Lage, attack them for 3, and then cast some things to bring them back and stuff. It's possible, but you still need to fade like a crop rotation or something for a Sigiri step, so there's still some draw steps to hope you don't die to.
So you would say you would definitely register this? Like if you had a big Legacy event coming up in London, say tomorrow, and you had to come up with a list, you would play something very close to this, right?
Yeah, I would play this at GP tomorrow, absolutely.
I think you mentioned on Eternal Durdles that you would probably play the Dark Confident. You felt very strong about including the 4th Dark Confident in place of the...
No. I was saying I only played 3 Thoughtseizes in the challenge.
Yeah, that was it, right?
Yeah, I would definitely add the 4th Thoughtseize back. That was kind of a rush decision. I think the deck really just always wants to Thoughtseize as early as possible to get information of what the deck's up against, and just take their key pieces. But I wanted to play 3 or 4 Dark Confidence more to get a feeling of how they were, and they really overperformed. So they're taking the slots that I was previously playing Tombstalkers in, which Tombstalker was excellent too. He really helped in the Delver matchup especially, which can be a little bit tough. I think I would say it's even. I felt slightly favoured against the average players, but the good Delver players I think will be about even.
So what are the good Delver players doing to stop you? What are they doing that's like making you uncomfortable?
It's the exact Delver game plan. So it's a fast clock. So Toman Delver is always the scariest thing, and then Daze, Spell Pierce, and Wasteland. Like you can fetch basics around Wasteland, of course, but they really hamper you kind of chaining spells together. So you want to be able to go like ponder, and then off the ponder you find either a Thoughtseize or a brainstorm. You want to have the options open to cast whichever one you find when you're chaining these spells into a potential combo. Or if you have the Phoenixes in the graveyard already, you really want the flexibility of a mana base that can cast everything in a chain. So when you're fetching basics, it does hamper you in what you can cast in like one turn, which is what the deck's trying to do.
But you're feeling you're favored. Basically, you're supposed to take on the control role in that matchup.
Yes, yeah. So against them, I'm in the process of writing up like a big like cyborg guide or preliminary thing, just to because people are asking a lot. But against them, I will take their threats of discard 99% of the time. So if you can stop them putting a clock on you, you kind of neuter their soft counter magic. The Wastelands doesn't like time walk you, and you can then sculpt to beat whatever the hate they have. Like, it doesn't matter how many Force of Wills and Dazes and Spell Piss they have if you're cantripping to find the Cabal Therapy and you're not dying. So
awesome. I think, actually, now that I think about it, I might actually give this deck a try.
You should. I'll come on stream with you sometime if you want.
Oh, we should do that, definitely.
Yeah.
Matt, how do you feel about this deck? Is this like something that would interest you? Because I know that you're more like into casting rhinos and big chunk spells, or like these days they probably call it. What's the politically correct name for chunk these days?
Abzan.
Abzan, yeah, exactly. Matt
That
is
hurts
big on
me
the Abzan
right
guys.
in the core.
It is painful.
It sounds like something right out of Harry Potter.
I don't know.
would love
I
him
find the
because
deck
of
is
name.
Prince of Abzan.
I find this deck is very interesting. Don't get me wrong. It's just surprising how much the meta changes when you don't have a Deathrite Shaman to deal with, because obviously, did this deck exist? 7 months ago? No.
Well, the card didn't exist.
Good point.
Yeah.
I think the deck probably would really struggle in a Deathrite Shaman meta.
So it's so interesting to see that this strategy is like really viable, and how different it is from the Vengevine way of doing things, because obviously being a flying creature and the way it comes back into play, really interesting. So are the 4 Tormod's Crypts here, that's some pretty heavy graveyard. Are you is that also for the mirror? It's probably pretty great, but do you find yourself encountering the mirror quite a bit, or?
No, I haven't played it. I've only played it 2 or 3 times, I think, but the Tormod's Crypts are probably the most asked about card in the deck, after people get over the weird combo to begin with. But no, every single person is just saying, why aren't you playing Surgicals? Because Surgical Extraction is such a commonly accepted as just the de facto graveyard hate in the format, or ley lines in mostly Chalice decks. But because this deck plays very little counter magic, you can't really protect your hand against discard, and every graveyard deck is playing discard. Reanimators playing their own Cabal Therapies and Unmasks and whatever. Dredge is playing Cabal Therapies. So I really wanted something proactive to play out. So it was between this and Nihil Spellbomb, but what won this over was you really just have to have this interaction from turn 1 against Reanimator especially, and Dredge. So it was between this and Leyline, but this just gives you more looks at it. So you can keep a good hand with cantrips, and then it gives you the option to ponder into it and cast it that same turn. Or you can cast it through a Chancellor of the Annex and stuff.
I guess one big upside of Surgical is that you can actually use it to trigger the Arclight Phoenix, if you have to. But I can totally agree, especially when it comes to Reanimator, I used to run up to 4 Surgicals and even 2 Fairy Mercabs at times. Yeah. And they always have the Unmask. Unmask is a card that didn't really see any legacy play for many years, and now you definitely have to account for it. And also judging by Eric Lenton's sideboard guide that he put on the internet, I think almost everyone goes by, you never side out Unmask. You can really tell that this card is so important to them, especially in post-board games.
Yeah, so I've just generally really disliked reactive graveyard hate. And so the interaction of Surgical being a spell to bring back the Phoenixes is nice and stuff, but the problem is, because it's a reactive card, by nature you're just reacting to what they're doing. But to bring back the Phoenixes, you're just casting on your turn, so it never really does what it's meant to do. It's just then a free spell, and then you're using a sideboard card to enact your plan. It's an easy thing to point out, but then it never really did what it wanted to do, and just got discarded every single time when I tried it. But I think Eric is still playing 2 Surgicals and 2 Tormod's Crypts. I haven't won him over yet.
Oh, Eric is on the stack as well now?
Yeah, he's been on it for...
Oh, he's actually, I think, on the leaderboard. I think he has got 8 trophies right now in the last 2 weeks or something.
I think at least half of them are with this deck.
Okay, now I think I really gotta try this.
So then... So then reasonably encountering this deck and the new Reanimator... Well, not the new Reanimator deck, but the black-red Reanimator deck. What is the graveyard hate card of choice that you would... If, say, for example, you have 3 slots to commit, Like, I'm running 3 Fairy Macabres right now, but I'm wondering, maybe I should be switching to Tormod's Crypt.
I hate to say it because people will listen and then probably do this, but Tormod's Crypt and Nihil Spellbomb are probably the best cards against this deck. Like, as with any of the graveyard hit options, you can still kind of play it and then lose to the Young Pyromancer Dark Confident plan. You have to be ready for them as well, but something that you can play to the board around the therapies and the Thoughtseizes is what you really want. I think I've actually had Phoenixes extracted 2 or 3 times total. It just doesn't happen if you're playing properly and you know what you're doing and you just are patient enough against the surgical decks. So,
it's like
I'd recommend things you can play proactively.
You just got to be careful. It's like when you're playing Punishing Fire, right? As long as you don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to get extracted, you typically don't get extracted. And nobody's running Extirpate, right? Like, to be fair.
Actually, some people started running Extirpate in Storm, I've seen it, like, where they want to take out the Force of Wills of their opponent. But,
I got Extirpated in Game 3 of the Challenge Finals.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but not on Phoenixes. It was a weird interaction where I knew his hand had Dire Ritual, Duress, and a Extirpate, and I had 2 Cabal Therapies in my hand. And so
I see.
He knew that I was going to therapy the Dire Ritual because that was the scariest card against me, and he drew a second Dire Ritual for the turn, so he was basically forced to Dire Ritual, Duress a therapy, then Extirpate them. And then from that I worked out that he had another Dire Ritual. But Extirpate's an interesting card because you do very often kind of make people tap out and cantrip into answers for your threats, and then you can combo them, and the Daze is basically protection against surgical half the time. But Extirpate would get around that. Or actually, if you have Extirpate, you can just pay the mana for Daze. But I'm game. I've spell pierced the Daze once. No fear.
I mean, there's fringe corner cases, right? Where that's right. I've seen people. Well, that's a legend that happened at our store, and I think every store has these kind of legends. So two dredge players face off against each other. They both keep 7. One of them plays his first land, Cable Therapy you, resolves, Leyline of the Void. And the other guy is like, so lucky, double hit.
What? I think I've heard this somewhere in the grapevine from someone, but I've never kind of trusted it, but it's an amazing story.
It's one of those legends that I've been hearing for like 10 years now. I wonder if it's true, but...
I'd like to believe it's true.
So, Matt, how do you feel about Legacy right now? Because we sent you like a metagame overview of what like at least the winning Magic Online metagame is like they on MTG Goldfish. They recently changed their algorithm, the way they both wizards post the decks. Like they're more handcrafted now. They want to show more variety. But overall, it gives you some kind of impression of which decks are winning quite a lot in Magic Online these days.
Yeah, I mean,
it's something that interests you.
So basically, like, I'm not sure if I said this before or not, but I feel like the room is on fire. What is happening? Like, Grixis was decently popular when I left, and it seems like it's almost even better compared to the rest of the format now that Death Threat's gone. Would you agree?
I mean, who were Grixis or like Checkpire's big adversaries before the Death Threat ban? I wonder what they were struggling against.
I think Bloodmoon decks were kind of giving them a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I guess they still do, kind of.
Yeah, I can't really remember. Like, I think they were just... Pile was so good.
Pile was
Depths
really
meant to be good against. Yeah, Depths was meant to be good against them. I think that's where it actually kind of started to come out the woodwork. It was a really unexplored strategy, and being good against a control deck without wastelands kind of propelled it to some level.
I guess the deck is still really good, right? You mentioned that there's like many different versions of the back Dark Depth deck.
I really, really respect that deck. I think it's I'd probably safely say it's tier 1 right now.
Yeah, I think it's very much tier 1 right now. It's also one of the reasons why I'm feeling a little bit better about Assassin's Trophy and Elves right now, because it gives you a way to like blow them out, whereas with Decay, like not that good anymore. Something that's surprising me is that I've been seeing a lot of blue-white Stoneblade recently.
Yeah, I was literally waiting to say that because I saw this and I was like, wait, what is this? Stoneblade is back? What's going on? And I'm actually very, very surprised, because considering the fact that Kolaghan's Command is so heavily played, you would think, oh man, there's no way you could play Stoneforge in this meta. And I'm wrong.
It is a weird resurgence, but I think the conclusion I've kind of come to, but could well be wrong, is I think Stoneforge is just good against Chalice of the Void decks. and there's been a huge influx of Chalice of the Void decks. At least what I've noticed from playing online. I don't know if you have noticed it too, Julian, but
you mean Chalice decks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I feel like
it's a little more.
Okay.
But I would say so. I think, to me, like, one of the reasons people play this is it's not exactly true for online, because I just saw that it's like online is 500 tickets. I think offline it's actually one of the cheaper legacy decks, especially if you play it with Back to Basics, which now that it has been reprinted is also like not super expensive anymore. And people really enjoy just casting Stoneforge. And I always felt like the only deck that like Stoneforge decks is really bad against is like Miracles. I think we've had a period from 2014 to 2000, almost like 17, 18 even, where Stoneforge was almost non-existent outside of Death and Taxes, and like it was the slow death of Stoneforge during those times. But now that Miracles has been neutered, and we're also seeing a little less like pile, I think people are like, they really want to cast their Stoneforges again, and I can see the appeal. Like, I really like how like blue-white Stoneblade is actually streamlined. I've never really liked blue-white-red Stoneblade, or even like Esper Stoneblade is okay, but even though I've been known to really not like Stoneforge because it's the exact opposite of anything I ever want to do in Legacy, which is like speed, put pressure on, like not even in terms of like damage, but in terms of like board presence, I still can appreciate the way this deck is built. It has some unfair elements in like True Name Nemesis and even Back to Basics. And yeah, the deck certainly has legs, and I think nobody would really be surprised to see it doing well, especially since it can also run like a pretty good sideboard, like blue and white, like always have had decent sideboard options against stuff like Control and Storm. So
needs more Meddling Mage. Meddling Mage.
Well, Meddling Mage is pretty much Flusterstorm these days, I think.
I know.
Flusterstorm is like the better Meddling Mage to me.
Makes me say it. No, but like I think that's like an interesting resurgence there. Like definitely, it's good to see Prison. I'm surprised at how well Eldrazi Stompy seems to be doing. But again, just like if Chalice decks are good, then
yeah.
Here we are.
Eldrazi seems to be almost criminally underplayed still. I think it's one of the strongest decks in the format, but pride stops people playing it, myself included. I don't ever want to play it. Particularly, it doesn't look fun to me.
Blue chat, right? How Eldrazi seems to
somewhat
secretly be very much tier 1 right now, because like it always gets a lot of flag for being like, oh, the stupid Chalice beatdown deck, whatever. But it really does well. Even though it doesn't show in the most recent numbers, I think it definitely is tier 1.
I remember I was for a few weeks back in, again, June of last year, so again, different meta, but similar, right? Deathrite still existed, whatever. I was playing Eldrazi Stompy because, you know, I was coming from school to the tournament, and I couldn't always bring my cards with me to school, so I would always just borrow a friend's Eldrazi Stompy deck. And you know how many times I went, like, 4-0? Which is all the rounds that we could play, so, unfortunately. The answer is, like, multiple weeks in a row, I was crushing people with Eldrazi Stompy, and I hated playing that deck every single time, but it felt good to win. So I was torn, like, do I keep playing this? And the answer is I moved, so I didn't really.
So you didn't have to answer that?
Exactly. So, however, the deck is extremely powerful. However, it feels, like you guys said, there's a little bit of a pride thing of like, I'd rather be doing, if I'm going to be playing Legacy, I'd rather do something more interesting.
I can appreciate that, but like, if I arrived at a point and I was like traveling to a big tournament and I wanted to do well, I think... I don't know if that's true for you guys, but I've never in my life been at a point where I was like ashamed of playing a deck because it was too powerful. It's more the opposite. I actually feel proud for choosing a deck that's like looked down upon, yet I still figured out that it's strong enough, so I want to play it. So that even though like as much as okay, I'm not going to say that. Owen Turtle once said, like, when he played Mono Black in Theros Standard, when people were complaining about, like, the power level of Mono Black, of that deck, he was said, you guys are stupid. The skill in this deck is to figure out that I want to play the deck. And I think that's something that's a little bit unappreciated at times.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment.
It feels a little bit...
sorry, Matt, go on.
I was just going to say, Mystical Tutor comes to mind in the whole, like, gentleman's agreement BS argument.
Years ago now.
That was a long time ago. Sorry, continue, Caleb.
What was I going to say? Yeah, there's a Max, who we spoke about earlier, playing his vintage birds, he's always been a very strong person who says you don't get points for playing a hard deck to play, you get points for winning a match. And it's a very simple way of saying it, but it's true. And I think, yeah, it's basically reaffirming what you were just saying.
Yeah. Something else that came up in Blue Chat, I think a couple of weeks ago now, was when Eric Landon dropped the bomb on everybody, especially in a chat dedicated to playing blue decks, that he feels that the metagame right now is set up in a way that, like, all the blue decks, they want to play against each other, but they don't want to play against the non-blue decks, like, Eldrazi, Stompy, Mono Red Prison, Elves, Dark Depth decks, and they just want to be left alone. Like, they want to do their blue thing against each other, play this very blue game, but once, like, then almost like I want to call it an external shock comes in, they are a little bit more helpless than they used to be. Do you feel the same about that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think Grixis Control especially has been feeling a lot of this hate. Like, as you were saying earlier about enchantments being good against it, like Choke is punishing, Chalice is punishing, Blood Moon is very punishing, Depths with like their land-based combo is punishing against Grixis. Miracles has slightly more tools, but it's still getting hit hard by Chalices and Chokes and stuff. So yeah, and like Eldrazi Post has become like a real thing as well in the last couple of years. And that's just amazing against control decks, which the blue decks have now just kind of moved to being mostly control, even away from mid-range to an extent.
Yeah. So, do you think that's also like a factor of the non-blue decks getting new tools, becoming stronger? Because I honestly feel that even though Elves, for example, is not as strong as it used to be, like when it, I think, very much was a tier 1 deck, when like tier 1 was like Miracles, Shardless, Elves, I think it's still much better than something like a year ago, and especially like all the Grixis decks, unless they overload on Elf side, which some of them sometimes do, you're feeling really comfortable playing against like Grixis decks that are playing their normal game, especially if you like come up with a list that's dedicated to grinding them out. A lot of people, especially in the Elves Discord, feel pretty good about that. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you're also like, you've always traditionally been really good against any kind of Stoneblade deck, but which is new after the ban of Sun's Dividing Top, like last year. Actually, it's 2 years ago, even though it's been a while.
Yeah.
Also, Miracles is, depending on whom you ask, like slightly or very much in favor of Elves. So I feel like the non-blue decks, also like a lot of the Dark Depth decks we mentioned, have caught up quite a bit with the blue decks who didn't really like. What are the last really big meaningful inclusions for quote unquote blue decks that we've gotten over the last years?
Well, I was going to get to a point where I think, Grixis has lost Deaththreat Shame and Miracles has lost Top, probably arguably the two best cards in their decks. While you're right, like we've seen these colorless decks get the Eldrazi, Oath of Gatewatch. So we've got Walking Ballista. They've got, I guess, Sorcerer's Spyglass. The Blood Moon deck's got Legion Warboss recently. Like, there's a lot of new inclusions, which maybe they're not creating new archetypes, but they're still powering up these decks enough, while the blue decks are losing some key pieces.
Death and Texas got like every set. Death and Texas gets like two cards that everybody gets excited about that nobody plays.
Well, I'm just waiting for the Rest in Peace Bear to be printed, and then they're going to eventually get a bear for everything, aren't they? But yeah.
So how does Siege Rhino fit into all of this? Matt has been known to like be a connoisseur of fine rhinos for quite a long time now. And if we ever see somebody break Siege Rhino with Splinter Twin, it's probably gonna be him. Matt, are you actually on a Siege Rhino deck for tomorrow?
I am in fact on a Siege Rhino list for tomorrow. That's correct. The reason why
how do you like ramp into Siege Rhino now that Deathlight Shaman is gone?
Veteran Explorer and Noble Hierarch.
Okay. So
why?
You're not playing a traditional NicFit, assuming you're not playing Deed?
I'm still playing Deed. I'm still doing it all. So, you're still playing Veteran Explorer, you're still playing Cabal Therapy, because those cards are still not bad. However, you still ramp into a 4/5 Lightning Helix, which is still, it seems to be, again, looking at the meta and not yet playing in it, seems to be okay. However, I've had to tweak the list a little bit, because there are some cards that are not good and some cards that are good. So, Deaththreat Shaman obviously gave you a clock, it gave you acceleration, it gave you everything that you ever wanted, but you don't get to have that anymore, so I cried. Long nights. Myself to sleep. So the real question is, what do you add in the new sets? Well, we got Assassin's Trophy, we got Last Hope a while ago, which has obviously been seeing seeing quite a bit of play, and Knight of Autumn. So Assassin's
Swiss
Trophy.
Army Knight.
Yeah, the Swiss Army Knight. I like that. That's pretty good. So Assassin's Trophy seems pretty good, at least for me, because before you always had trouble dealing with Jaces, with Anglers, with whatever, and you were playing this suite of removal spells, a little this, a little that, a little Path, a little Abrupt Decay, a little Deed, because you're trying to hit everything. And Assassin's Trophy does hit basically everything you want it to hit. It hits the chalices or whatever they're trying to play against you, which doesn't end up working, but anyway, that's another. Mostly you were always sad to see like Anglers on the other side of the board. You're like, oh, what do I do against this Angler? What do I do against a Jace? What do I do? So before you would maybe have to play Maelstrom Pulse or just kind of ignore the Jace and hopefully you can get there, but now you can actually hit Jace pretty reliably and at instant speed, which is quite important. And we're playing Knight of Autumn, or I am playing Knight of Autumn, because it does everything you need to do, and Rex Sage is hot garbage compared to this card. So that's...
Oh, I wish... Imagine if they had printed it as an elf. Oh god, I would be so happy.
That's why they didn't print it, just for you.
I mean, it looks like an elf, right?
It does, kind of. It's an elf knight, I guess. Anyway, however, I have to concede the fact that you need to splash some other color to be hitting, like, the lands-based matchups. At least in our meta, there are people who play Dark Depths. There are people who play 43 lands, because there are numerous people who I sold Tabernacles to back when they were cheaper, and they still own them. So it's a big problem. So
you created your own problems?
I did. More money, more problems. That's unfortunately how it went. So actually, usually back in the day, I would actually splash a little bit of red for Blood Moon, and that actually usually did the trick, because you would go Deathray, because Deathray Shaman produced any color of mana. You were fine. Turn 2 Blood Moon, get you. Now you don't get to do that. So actually, the big surprise, because this will come out after the tournament, I'm playing Leovold, Emissary of Trust, and I'm playing Back to Basics.
Oh, you're playing Back to Basics in NicFit?
Yep.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. You also play Noble Hierarch, you mentioned, which...
I play Noble Hierarch,
yeah.
I play Assassin's Trophy, I play Path, so... You are so it kind of seems like, huh?
Actually, it doesn't make sense at all. But keep going.
Yeah. So you're gonna say like, you're giving them all of their basic lands, and then you're going to let them play with them. Well,
and then
yes.
Step 2 question mark, Step 3 profit.
The thing is that you are still going to be the deck that whatever deck that you're playing against, as long as it's not Azorius Stoneblade or some deck with like 8 basic lands, you're still going to be the person with 6 basic lands, and they're going to have 2 basic lands.
You can also Assassin's Trophy the basic lands.
That is true.
So you're trapping them, like, get them all out of the deck and make Assassin's Trophy better? You become like a glorious land destruction deck? Okay, Matt, here's the important question. Is there Eternal Witness and Recurring Nightmare in the deck?
There is Eternal Witness. There is a Korean Recurring Nightmare sitting beside my deck box wondering, what will I do with you? So that was going to be my super surprise secret tech. Now that Deathray Shaman is gone, Recurring Nightmare is definitely a card, because sometimes you get locked up in the combat step and you're like, what am I going to do with these Siege Rhinos in the graveyard and this Siege Rhino in play? And the answer is drain them repeatedly until they die. Sometimes you get stuck behind a Maze of Ith. What do? You Recurring Nightmare.
Yeah.
However, how do you...
I could see against Grixis Control, for example, Baleful Strix could be a problem for you if you can't find the deed for it.
Exactly, and it is.
Recurring Nightmare gives you a way to like deal with it and then get back into Rhino action.
Exactly. So right now I'm trying out 2 Liliana the Last Hope to see, is that going to be my like Baleful Strix, Young Pyromancer kind of hate, to kind of like bridge me until I hit deeds, or am I going to be running a single Recurring Nightmare? Now the real question is, like, if I'm running a single Recurring Nightmare, is that even worth it? I don't run cantrips. You run like
Sylvan Library?
You run 3 Sylvan Libraries, which is pretty excellent, because you have to imagine you're probably blowing up 1 with deeds, so running 3 is not bad. So the question is,
you get me wondering, do you even want to run deed in this deck? Is this not more like a Toxic Deluge deck?
So that, and again, that's actually the question, is do I want to be running Toxic Deluge? And the answer is I don't know. I might. So this tournament is kind of a testing ground of like, maybe I just run a bunch of Deluge in the deck. But I'm worried that because you already, you sometimes hit hard with Sylvan Library, you dig deep, and maybe you don't hit those Rhinos to get your life total back up. Does Toxic Deluge put you in a situation where you just get bolted out of the game by these Delver decks or these control decks? So I'm curious to see if Pernicious Deed is still pulling its weight, and if it isn't, the next step will be to turn it over into a Toxic Deluge.
Okay, Okay, Matt, we should release a next episode about this, like where you talk about your experiences. Like maybe we should like turn this into a whole series, like Matt, the return of Matt.
I would love to do that, but
And are you gonna attend that tournament? Driving your new wheels?
I will not, because currently it is snowing, and I have the most racetrack-oriented tires that they actually put on the car. So the chances that I could actually make it to the tournament in the car are 0. I'm actually quoting that it would be 0% that I would make it.
Okay. And we are mentioning this car because Matt recently got... Matt, you want to tell us? You probably know more about... I only know that it's a green Lotus.
Yes, so back in August, right before I left, which is actually a terrible idea. Don't ever do that. Don't buy something and then leave. It doesn't make sense. However, my other car has been in the shop for a little while, so I was getting really desperate because I was driving around a Subaru, and as a wonderful vehicle as it is currently, because it is snowy and it'll go anywhere, I decided that I needed a little bit different of a driving experience, so I went to go test drive a Lotus Elise, and it is an amazing driving experience. Not that it has any connotation with... It does have a little bit with magic.
Of course it does, come on.
You may...
have you seen Matt's license plates? If not, you should go to itsjulian.com, check out the podcast news post, and look at the picture that we got there.
So they wouldn't allow me to have NicFit as a license plate. So you are only allowed 6 characters in British Columbia for a custom license plate. It's 6 characters and then a space or a hyphen or whatever you want. But you can only have 6 characters. So
but NicFit should work.
I thought NicFit would be great, and it does. And nobody else has it, so it'd be perfect. So I thought, okay, my Lotus is black, white, and green. Okay, so obviously that should be fine, right?
That's some real dedication, dude. Seriously.
Yeah. So very important. They wouldn't let me have it because of it could. They said there could be a negative connotation with some other outlandish expression, something to do with their. They said it could be misconstrued, and I'm like, oh, well, I disagree with that. And they said, well, there's no real way that you can contest it, so we're just telling you no. So I said, okay.
Oh, I think I can see what you're referring. Okay, anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So I said, well, what about... They said, because I explained what NicFit was and, how it was,
How did you even explain that?
I went deep. I explained... Magic. I explained NicFit and how it changed to NicFit, and that was and they're like, well, you can have NCEFIT, and I'm like, well, but that looks bad, right? It, the symmetry of having the 2 eyes in between each thing, it looks better on the license plate, and they're like, well, no, you can't have it, sorry. So I said, okay, well, I could either have junk or Bayou. The problem is if I put junk on my license plate, everybody's going to think I'm driving around a pile of junk, right? Or I'm criticizing the car. So
you chose Epson.
I chose Bayou. So Bayou,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so Bayou was a nickname that a group of friends here gave for me because all I do is play Bayous in every deck that I've basically played in the last little while. So it's black and green.
That's actually not very flattering.
I know, they say it's because I'm a swamp. So, unfortunately, Mangrove Sumph is too long for the license plate, so yeah, I have to go with Bayou.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Callum, how are you going to get to your tournament tomorrow?
Oh, I'm not playing one tomorrow. I was saying if there was a GP tomorrow.
Oh, if there was a
Yeah.
GP. Oh, and
Yeah.
speaking of GPs, by the way, this I don't want to talk about this too much because I think it actually warrants an entire episode of its own. But Matt, did you hear about all the recent organized play changes that have been implemented for Magic?
I heard that they will be called Magic Fests, and I died inside.
And did you also hear that the Pro Tour is now a Mythic championship?
No? What? What are they doing to my
Yeah.
game?
Well,
Not
it
my
sounds like something
DCI.
straight out of
not
Yu-Gi-Oh!
my. Yeah, I don't know. This seems weird. First they took away my pre-releases, okay, and those were
Did they?
amazing when we. Well, they changed, right? They used to be more in a conventional scenario, and then the stores kind of took them over, and that was okay, fine. I understand what they want to do, and then now they're taking away my GPs. I don't know.
But technically, the GPs still exist. So if you attend a Magic Fest, and I still can't believe they I get the general idea that it's gonna be more about the entire weekend. And
That is a
things they're gonna
terrible
experience
name.
there. The name is terrible. I totally agree, but I mean, I even have some hope that eventually it might actually change, because you know that there's this guy. He runs the Magic Fest Edinburgh, which is like a magician's convention or whatever. He was actually tweeting at Saffron Olive of MTG Goldfish and asking him not to use that name. And then Saffron was like, actually, I'm not involved with like choosing that name. I'm not even part of Wizards of the Coast. But the name is just so bad. But GPs are still going to be a thing, and they're going to be part of a Magic Fest. So the weekend is going to be branded as a Magic Fest and have hopefully a lot more like things to do and explore, but the GP is still going to be there. But one of the big things they changed is that nobody really knows how to actually properly qualify for the Mythic Championships, which is like the Pro Tour that we're going to see from now on. The top 32 players in the world, they're part of the Magic Pro League. They are invited, and those are the players. They've got a contract. They earn at least $75,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
And in exchange, they have to like stream and put up like a couple of. Basically, they have to like be an ambassador of the game, which kind of backfired because like 2 weeks after it was announced, like one of the guys was immediately disqualified for cheating at that tournament. But they worked it out, and they didn't like remove him, and they changed the policy with regards to how to punish him, which was like okay. But actually I can see why they did it. It just like the timing was like super bad because it was a reaction to what happened. But anyway, the big thing is GPs outside of like, which honestly to most of us is still the most important thing, being like a great competitive experience. They don't mean that as much as they used to be anymore, because there's, at least as of now, there's no such thing as like grinding many GPs over a season for like, you know, pro points to get like silver, gold, platinum, whatever. And a lot of the grinders, like the people who were like on and off the Pro Tour who wanted to make it big, they don't really know, like, why should I attend this GP anymore? And I think at least in the US, I witnessed a trend, especially on Twitter, where people were like, you know what, I'm actually going to join the SCG circus. Whereas in the past, it was like, you were this SCG grinder, like Jerry Thompson, like BBD. They used to be like the SCG people, and then there was like the Pro Tour crowd. And eventually they made the step onto the Pro Tour, and then they became like Pro Tour regulars and like World Championship competitors, or like boycotters in Jerry's case. But now it feels like a lot of people are actually going back, and they're like, you know what, I don't know why I should attend these GPs, which have like, compared to attendance and how much money they cost, horrible payout. And you can still, I think, get on the Mythic Championship if you go X2, but to a lot of people it was also about getting that stability of having something like gold, which qualified you, I think, for all the Pro Tours in the season and gave you some money and stuff. And so that is gone. And there might be changes by Wizards of the Coast to still reward people for continuous GP attendance. But before we came to this podcast, I did some research, and like nobody in Blue Chat could tell me. Like Rich Shea was like, oh, it's complicated, nobody knows. And also on Twitter, nobody really knew. So this far, GPs, they lost a lot of value, which hasn't been replaced, and people are confused and sad about that.
Yeah, there's been very, very little information kind of released to the public at the very least on any of this. Everyone's kind of running around headless and just has no idea what's going on, and it's been going on for too long that people are now just giving up. I think I've seen a lot of people saying they're just selling their collection, stopping playing, or as you said, a lot of the GP players are just going to move to the SCG tour if they can. Yeah,
it's kind of sad, because I honestly still believe that this year has the potential to be probably the biggest year in the history of Magic for the growth of the game.
Absolutely.
Because, I am very, very optimistic about that, because it's getting so much like spotlight on Twitch. Like, so many more people are viewing Magic, so many more people are playing Magic, and as long as they find a way to like actually make it enjoyable for also like the people who are in the middle, like not the very beginners and not like the top pros who are grinding for the Mythic Championship. Sorry,
that's so funny to say.
It's like very good. Honestly, like if you meet somebody and they're like, oh, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm attending the Magic Pro Tour. It's like, okay, Pro Tour, that sounds like pro. No, I'm going to the Mythic Championship. I feel like I'm dressing up as a wizard and like dancing around and casting like fairies and stuff.
Quote unquote, like muggles or outsiders. They just won't understand it. It just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. But I still do believe that like the more eyes there are on Magic, the more money there will be involved in Magic, and the better a lot of people will have it. But that doesn't say anything about the way the game is played, because like an entirely different discussion is like best of one versus best of three, and how that is going to work out in the long run. And I'm not that optimistic about that, because I think in the very long run it's actually going to create this huge divide between a standard, which I think can be tuned to be more playable. It's like 3 best of one matches, basically eliminating sideboards, right? Whereas like older formats, that's no possibility. And I think always felt there was like already a divide between like new school and old school Magic, and I think it's only gonna get bigger. That's certainly a downside.
It feels like we're going to be moving away from, well, they call it tabletop as real cards now as well. I can't remember the exact details, but I remember seeing a tweet or an article where someone said playing on Arena they will be able to like curate different ban lists for different formats on Arena, especially. So there's a very real chance that we have different ban lists for online and real life.
Yeah, I think you might have seen my tweet. I actually tweeted about that.
Oh, if it was you, okay. Yeah, so if that becomes real, then we may just see paper phased out at some point in the very eventual future. I mean, I'm not sure, but
that's kind of the whole point for me.
That's actually making people uncomfortable, right?
Absolutely.
Because part of it is having the physical interaction with not only your friends and seeing them in person, but like the physical.
Yeah. I mean, it's Magic the Gathering to be cheesy, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Going back to the thing about GPs, I've recently made a statement that some people probably didn't understand correctly, and honestly, it's been kind of phrased that way intentional. And that is that I think there are too many GPs or Magic Fests. Actually, let's say GPs. There's too many GPs right now. And that probably sounds weird, so let me explain that. Because I honestly do believe that in order to like be enjoyable to everyone, Wizards should emulate a tournament system that's used by most esports right now. And that is to have like these big tournaments, like most other games call it majors or whatever you want to call it. We call them Magic Fest. Now we call them Mythic Championships. And I think we're going to have like 4 or 5 a year or something. I think 4 or 5, maybe even 6 sounds like a good idea. But then below that, I think we do have too many GPs, because like if GPs are not going to be as meaningful anymore, and people are actually like feeling the value you get at the GP isn't as great as it used to be. I mean, I still remember playing constructed GPs for like 25 euros, and they're like, what, like 80 euros or something? I don't even know.
They're very pricey.
Yeah. I actually do believe that GPs would be more attractive to attend. For example, if in our region we had like in Europe, this is just a figure I'm putting out of my ass. If there were only like 8 GPs, I don't know. Maybe you already have that many. Maybe something like 5 to 6 GPs a year. And going to that GP would be like a really big thing. Like right now, it's like you even just sometimes randomly go to a GP if it's in your neighborhood. And I mean, for Germany, that's kind of hard because you don't get any actual German GPs. But basically, what I want to say, what I feel like is you should give more value to individual GPs to make it so that everyone who's like even somewhat close to that GP or could reach the GP really wants to go there. And then you're going to have like your big main event, but you're also going to have like big side events for all the other formats, be it like Standard, Modern, Legacy, even Vintage. Like imagine if you only had like 5 GPs in Europe a year, and all of those had like really big Vintage events. And even if Channel Fireball just breaks even on running those, I mean, so many people would attend those. And that's my idea. Maybe it's bound, like maybe there's like a limit to how much you can do that, because like then you need even bigger convention halls. But I think that might be doable. But yeah, that's my idea.
That makes sense to me. I guess they have the power to contextualize how they want it to run. Like, yeah, as you're saying, make it an even bigger thing, but less of them. I don't think people would have a problem with that. If they're making the GP worthwhile to go to, they need to, well, the prize support has always been pretty poor for them. And so they need to tell the people what it really is. If it's actually a huge tournament that you get a lot of prize money, or like, but up until recently they just felt like very large PTQs to an extent. So they really were just grinding tournaments. You'd have the same people going to every single GP trying to spike an X2 to qualify for the Pro Tour. If that's what the GPs were going to be about, then I don't think people would have a problem with that either. Like, they don't need it to be a big flashy event. Although, as you were saying, I think that's what they should focus on, because Magic is very much becoming not about the grind and not about the Pro Tour. It's becoming this esports thing, as they say. But Yeah, I think this is where people are kind of losing a lot of faith as well. This lack of communication on what these events mean to them and what they mean to the people and what the people should be doing for it.
Yeah, because I'm looking at as a way of like there's different stepping stones in your Magic career, like different places or like sizes of tournaments you attend. And in the past, it usually used to be like FNM, and then probably like, I think the way it was intended for Wizards, even straight to a GP. And then once you got hooked, you maybe even to the Pro Tour. And when I say I think there's too many GPs, I think if they really reduce the number of GPs and make them more attractive to begin with, and really like the thing you just have to attend if you somehow can, because right now a GP doesn't feel like that at all. Like the value of a GP feels very much watered down.
Yeah.
But if the GP was like the big thing, like the thing you had to just like be there, I think also a lot of people in my neighborhoods who play Magic but don't really like see the value of going to a GP might eventually go, because they're quote unquote too big for our local metagame, but they're still too small to become like a regular GP grinder. And then with there being like so many GPs, they don't even see like the value in going there. But if it was like a much better experience and offered a lot more things for them, then they might go.
That makes sense.
What I want to add to that is, I also believe like if you actually did decrease the number of GPs and made them a little bit more attractive, I also think that you should really, really strengthen like local scenes. Like for example, Southern Germany, whatever, or like in your case, like Greater London or something, like to provide something to, for example, shops like the smaller TOs, not like the big nationwide TOs, to run tournaments. Maybe even like bring back something such as like regionals. I think in the US, Star City Games has been running regionals, which used to be like a Wizards of the Coast thing, like many moons ago, but now it's not anymore. Because right now, like our stores, they just do FNMs, but they never really do like slightly bigger tournaments. I mean, they do offer like Modern Legacy at times, for example, but I remember a time when like we had these larger tournaments where people from far away travel to, and that's not happening anymore. And I mean, in the end, it's for the store, it's about whether they make money or they don't make money. But maybe there's a way for Wizards to actually like give back to the stores and incentivize the stores, or even like Wizards themselves create like a regional network, even though I think it's much easier to organize by the local, well, I almost might call it authorities on how to run tournaments.
Yeah, the impression I've got from speaking to local TOs here is that Wizards just aren't as interested in that. Unless they're like pushing their agenda. There was a big thing that came up when one of our biggest TOs, or probably arguably the biggest TO in England, which is they're called Axion now, they've been very, very strong pushers for a big legacy scene. They've run 100 to 200 plus people tournaments with like giving away 30, 40 plus jewels. They've done a lot for legacy in England, and they run nationals, and each nationals they put on big mega modern mega legacy events, and Wizards of the Coast told them not to have a legacy side event. Like it just wasn't part of their agenda, and they told them they weren't going to run nationals if they didn't allow them to do it, which was great.
I mean, it's the same for Magic Cup Market, right?
Yeah,
they've been struggling for so long to get premier status for like the big tournaments, and even to this day, like Wizards gives it to pretty much all the tournaments they run, but not for legacy. And they even they made a point to reach out to Magic Card Market to tell them, well, you will only ever get like premier status if you start offering like limited and like standard, and MKM was like, well, our legacy tournaments pull in like hundreds of players, whereas the standard tournament pulled like 40.
This is what they're known for, and people are going to the GPs for their events, and if they're doing away with that, maybe the MKMs are going to fill up with standard more, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, MKM has already grown their standard attendance from what I've seen, but there's also like, it's also a factor that like they don't get as many legacy players anymore, which is unfortunate, but that's also like a product of them not always having the most attractive cities to run tournaments, and which in turn is a problem because like apparently like venues are really, really expensive, so they can't always go to Barcelona or wherever you want to go, so they go to like Bologna or Zaragoza, and it's like, okay. But yeah, I don't even want to get too deep into that. Just the way I imagine a very, very viable, healthy esports, even focused future for Magic is to like, you have your FNM, maybe you even rebrand FNM, I don't know, you have your local thing where you go to, then there's like a step up, there's like this regional thing which is still very much organized by the local stores or people. Then you have your GPs, which is like the must-attend format for, like the must-attend event for anyone who's not a pro. And even if you're a pro, you might want to go. But if you're a pro, you go to the Mythic Championships. And the Mythic Championships, either you're already qualified for, or you arrive like 1 or 2 days early and you try to qualify through pools, which is like the way it works for a lot of esports. Like you get these guys who are seeded into the group stage, and then out of the group stage, you enter the double elimination tournament. And then on the loser side, there's the people coming in from like the so-called open bracket. That's pretty much how it works for like StarCraft, how it works for even like Street Fighters and stuff. And like that's the future I would really see, because that's the tried and true formula for esports, and I really think Wizards should do something like that. We tried something like that in the Legacy Premier League, where we also ran pools into a double elimination bracket, and from the feedback we got, people really liked it quite a bit, and also the players. It also like helped us showcase a lot more decks, which is probably something you couldn't do in a Mythic Championship, because people are bound to play the same deck over and over again. But overall, the structure, I think, really lends itself to like being a good esports framework to work with.
As a viewer, I loved watching it as well. It added different elements to the usual kind of just best of 3 things, and just, as well the structure, as you say, of Swiss and things. Yeah.
Okay, so Matt, you mentioned you had to Dr. Matt, but Matt, did you get your doctor by now? Are you like a Dr. Matt?
I have been so since May of 2018.
Why didn't you tell me?
I'm pretty sure I told you. No?
Yeah, okay, so then I forgot. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Dr. Matt P in the house. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap it up here. I really want to provide some shout out to Matthew Kloss, who I hope I pronounce your name the German way. Maybe the American way would be close. I don't know.
How do you spell it?
Kloss.
Kloss? I don't know.
Yeah. He sent us some feedback that he enjoys the cast quite a bit, and he asked about the new episode when it was going to come out, and I promised him that we were working on that. So here's to you, Matt, and Callum. Thanks for being part of the cast tonight, and see you again next time for the second half of our 100 episodes.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Next time, Rhino time.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird. Bird is a winner. Well, a bird. Well, a bird is a winner. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird. Well, a bird is a winner. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird. Well, a bird is a winner. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody knows that the bird is a winner. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, everybody's heard about the bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a 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 bird. The bird's a winner. Well, don't you know about the bird? Well, everybody's talking about the bird. Well, a bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird. Seven.